This is Judge Joe Brown, and we're listening to We All Be News, News Free Dixie for the 21st century.
Hello, boys and girls, scholars and laymen. Welcome to another wonderful edutainment edition of the Artivist Thinks. Now, I've been keeping up, as you all have, with the Sandra Bland travesty down in the Perry View area, Waller County, Texas, which is not that far from Houston, Texas. Well, we all know Friday, July the 10th, 2015, Sister Sandra Bland, Chicago area native, was on her way down to Perry View A&M, the historically black college and university, to start her new job on Monday. But instead, she was found hanging in her jail cell at the Waller County Sheriff's jail, and under questionable circumstances. Some people say suicide. Some people think foul play. Now, this beautiful sister, 28 years old, who was also an alum of Prairie View A&M, was actually pulled over for a alleged failure to signal during the changing of lanes. And according to her, she was actually being tailed by the police officer, the sheriff's deputy who pulled her over, and she was trying to get out of his way. And the sheriff's deputy, I guess, didn't see it that way. He became a little bit overly aggressive, as they say, even physically pulling out Sister Sandra Bland, and threatened, in his words, to light her up if she does not comply, if she didn't comply with his orders. If you see the raw video, as well as the camera footage shot by the citizen, everything is very disturbing. It's very, very disturbing. The whole melee. And also, he was assisted by a female police officer. What I could get from the raw video, it was a female police officer that assisted the state trooper in manhandling and violate the human and civil rights of Sister Sandra Bland. I believe he did that because he was irked or irritated by the fact that she refused to put out her cigarette while she was in her car. And he allegedly claimed that she was resisting arrest, but at that point she was not under arrest. But I say all this to say, this is nothing new. Unfortunately, it is very sad and tragic that Sister Bland had to lose her life in this whole travesty. You can look at her social media fingerprints. You can see very much that she was an advocate for Black Lives Matter. She talked about racism and white supremacy and police brutality in her Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram postings. She was a very vocal sister, a young sister, 28 years old, who wanted to make a difference for the next generation. Let's check out her videos and things, and you can see that this woman really believed standing up for herself and for her people. Now, with that said, that's why I think people have a hard time believing that she may have committed suicide. And, a lot of times I had a relative who allegedly committed suicide. He was suffering from a rare form of cancer. He shot himself allegedly in his bed at his home. He had people that were staying with him, and nobody noticed anything until the next morning when they discovered his body. I guess he bled out to death. He shot himself, I believe, in the side somehow with his gun, and he also left a suicide note. And it came to a shock to us that he committed suicide, because on that Friday, me and some other family members met him at the doctor's office. And he actually did look like death. He had a fear in his eyes. He had a fear of worry of my Uncle Willie James. It was amazing to see him like so frail looking and also being pushed around in a wheelchair, because I could remember just a month before The last meal I had with Uncle Willie James was over my Aunt Liz's house, for Mother's Day. And to me, he was very gregarious, very full of life, the life of the party, a very hearty, big laugh that filled the room. I never imagined that my great uncle, would be dead within a month time, overtaken by a serious illness, over his worries over a serious illness, leading to the taking of his life. Now, he killed himself. He left a suicide note. And this is based on that. And in hindsight, nobody really knew that, except for, I guess, for a small group of his closest confidants, from what I heard, knew that he was going to take his life very soon. I can remember my uncle, when I was about to leave his house, he asked me, was I going to visit him again that weekend? And he had this look in his eye. And I said, sure, I would try, Uncle Willie James. I just thought I had more time with Uncle Willie James, and early the next week, basically, I guess I want to say that Monday, he was dead. But getting back to Sister Sandra Bland, people say why the relatives didn't see signs of her, and I don't believe, be honest with you, that nobody can tell when somebody's going to commit suicide. It's hard to tell about the quote-unquote warning signs, because everybody go through their ups and downs and things of that nature. Everybody have their days. I'm having an interesting day, but don't mean I'm going to commit suicide. And people talking about, well, she posted something about her being depressed, post-traumatic depression, all this other stuff. And my understanding, she lost her child recently, not too long ago. So they said allegedly that she tried to commit suicide by taking her pills, allegedly, but it's a lot of contradictory information coming out the Waller County Sheriff's Office, because on one part of the document that she was allegedly signed or was interviewed for, she said she tried to commit suicide. The other document that they have said she didn't have any suicidal tendencies, nor did she ever try to commit suicide. So there's a lot of contradictory information. And I want people to be very critical and skeptical of the authorities on this matter, because they deserve scrutiny. Because usually the official story is the official lie. Once again, let me say, the official story is the official lie. So there's a lot of contradictions even in the documents. And also the jailhouse confession of the sister who allegedly said she didn't hear any struggles. She heard her crying over the 3 days she was there. She didn't hear any struggles. Well, like I said, my uncle, he committed suicide in his bedroom with a gun. And it was 2 people staying with him at the time, and nobody knew that he committed suicide until the next morning when they found his body in the bed when he was unresponsive. So people could be, heavy sleepers or stuff like that. You don't really know what happened. And also, there's another theory I'll throw out there that I have not heard anybody touch upon. And I want people to start really thinking about this as well. Did she have a seizure? Because they said she was epileptic, and she even said it in the video when the state trooper hit her head to the ground that she was epileptic, had epilepsy, because she had a seizure. Is it possible that Sister Sandra Bland could have had a seizure while in custody, and somebody panicked, or some people panicked, because of the reputation of that jailing facility? Like, they have been under scrutiny by other authorities, by the way they have handled inmates, how the way they treated inmates, suspicion. They had a suicide there before, and it was already under heavy scrutiny. So couldn't this have been a cover-up due to the trauma she received when she was arrested, because she had a seizure? And I want to know if the second autopsy will put that out there as well, because we already seen the first autopsy. They say she committed suicide. I say bullshit, because the thing about it is, in the video, which is so damning, she complained about the state trooper hitting her head against the ground hard. That could possibly trigger a delayed seizure. It's possible. I believe it's possible that she could have had a seizure, and then her body was discovered, and they act like it was a suicide. They cover it up, And also another thing that bothered me about this whole Sandra Bland or Sandy Bland situation was the fact that they announced from the autopsy results, the first autopsy results, that she had a substantial amount of marijuana in her system. And I'm thinking to myself, how does having marijuana in her system justify what happened to this poor sister while being held in a jail facility in small town Texas? If we got two states like Washington State and Colorado who approve of the growing and selling of marijuana, and then you have out in California that you are allowed to use marijuana for medicinal purposes, how in the hell does it make Sister Sandra Bland worthy of death? I remember one of my favorite musicians. I love jazz music, and one of my favorite musicians of all time is saxophone Louis Armstrong. And Louis Armstrong once famously said that his smoking weed was an insulator against racism. Once again, he said smoking weed was an insulator against racism, white supremacy. So Louis Armstrong smoked weed every day. He smoked weed every day. So every time you see Louis Armstrong in some type of old footage and stuff, and him on a movie and all this other stuff singing with Ben Crosby, he was high as hell, man. So Louis Armstrong smoked every day because he had to deal with white people and racism and white supremacy. So basically, a lot of black folks self-medicate, whether it be through drugs and alcohol per se, because you're dealing with a beast known as white supremacy that does not give you any breaks as a person of color in this system. So, like the quote or paraphrase James Baldwin, to be black in America is to be in a constant rage all the time. So you dealing with this, I guess, this angry black person complex, I guess, because you're dealing with white people, you're dealing with white supremacy, racism 24/7. There is no break from the beast. So you think about all this stuff in the bigger scheme of things. Did her marijuana usage, according to the autopsy results, make her a okay target for the police to violate her human and civil rights? Hell no, it did not. And with that said, could there have been a delayed seizure or a response to the treatment she received on Friday? Because they did find that her back was bruised from a kneeing by the state trooper as well. But if they're all already tunnel vision, because even law enforcement and the so-called experts can get what's called tunnel vision, they already focus on making this a suicide instead of trying to research and be open to all the possibilities of this being more than just a suicide. I mean, it's just a suicide. Like, is it possible that the coroner and the forensics people only had suicide on their mind, so they was able to block out anything else that might have raised some type of suspicion, or it might be contrary to what a suicide is? And to me, she could have had a seizure, and to me, the state would still be guilty because of what they did to her on Friday, how they treated her throughout the whole ordeal. You know, like I said, I won't trust anything as it relates to the quote-unquote timeline, as it relates to even the video, because also, is there more than one way to get to that jail cell where Sister Bland was held? Was there an alternative route besides going through that way where the video, or they got this lobby and all this stuff, and we haven't adopted the video, but is there another way to get into that jail cell? Because they're looking at that jail cell, I'm sure there could be other ways to, for a person to get in there to hide or whatever, do their thing and go unnoticed, or to be in conspiracy with the authorities that ran the jail. And I throw this out there as well. Could there have been other folks in the jail cell with her when that happened? Like inmates. I don't know. We don't really know. We're just going by what they're telling us. You know, they have access to everything. They control that environment. It's like it's their home court advantage. They could tell us anything. They could produce anything, and no matter if it's contradictory, you have the law and all his resources behind this, making this, even controlling the media. Letting them have access to this and that. And did they coerce the jailhouse confession from the woman who said that she talked to Sister Bland over that 3-day ordeal, and that she was crying? See, we don't really know anything. I don't really know anything, but I do know is critical thinking is important, as well as having imagination. To paraphrase Einstein, he said imagination was more powerful and important than knowledge. I'm paraphrasing him. That's not his exact quote, but it's somewhere near the ballpark of what he actually said, I believe. But with that said, people should be looking at that. Hey, could she have just had a seizure based on how she was treated and being traumatized from that incident on Friday? And could they had panicked and cover it up and made like a suicide? Because I'm still having a hard time believing that trash bag was able to do that to their sister. And also, let's look at another alternative. Was this a form of revolutionary suicide? Did Sister Sandra Bland, in her want and need to be able to do something for the cause that's bigger than herself, in order to serve her people, was she willing to die for her people in the form of taking her life in the form of revolutionary suicide? Where the hell I get this notion of revolutionary suicide? Well, revolutionary suicide is the title of the autobiography of Huey P. Newton, who was the co-founder of the Black Panther Party for self-defense out in Oakland back in the 60s. He wrote a book called Revolutionary Suicide that basically talked about his philosophy as it relates to being a revolutionary. And I want to read some passages from Revolutionary Suicide so you can have a better understanding where I'm coming from and how I'm connecting this with Sandra Bland. A possibility. Now, these are just all things I've been thinking about for the past week. A lot of things been on my mind. But let me read a passage from Revolutionary Suicide. I think it's a couple of passages actually. Black men and women who refuse to live under oppression are dangerous to white society because they become symbols of hope to their brothers and sisters, inspiring them to follow their example. Huey P. Newton, Revolutionary Suicide. And also, I want to read a longer quote I think is very important. I want to include in this context. I do not think that life will change for the better without an assault on the establishment, which goes on exploiting the wretched of the earth. This belief lies at the heart of the concept of revolutionary suicide. Thus, it is better to oppose the forces that would drive me to self-murder than to endure them. Although I risk the likelihood of death, there is at least a possibility, if not the probability, of changing intolerable conditions. This possibility is important because much in human existence is based upon hope without any real understanding of the odds. Indeed, we are all, black and white alike, ill in the same way, mortally ill. But before we die, how shall we live? I say with hope and dignity. And if premature death is the result, that death has a meaning reactionary suicide can never have. It is the price of self-respect. Revolutionary suicide does not mean that I and my comrades have a death wish. It means just the opposite. We have such a strong desire to live with hope and human dignity that existence without them is impossible. When reactionary forces crush us, we must move against these forces, even at the risk of death. We will have to be driven out with a stick. That's from Huey P. Newton, Revolutionary Suicide. So, wow. Okay. So, just reading and looking at and viewing Sister Sandra Bland's stuff, she like she was ahead of mind. She was evolving into a revolutionary in terms of her stance about how they was treating her people, becoming very vocal. Even her last stand against the establishment She was defined, not defined as being an uppity nigga, but defined in terms of being a black person with some self-respect, with some knowledge of self. The sister knew who she was. See, my problem is this. People say, well, maybe she was more compliant and more nice and kind to the officer. To me, she didn't do anything out of the ordinary what human beings might do under that circumstance, in terms of being frustrated by the fact that she tried to get out the cop's way when it was on the road. The cop was riding her tail. She tried to get out the way, and she might have forgot to turn on her turn signal. And really, by the cop being just a asshole, he was an asshole. He was a bully. He was trying to abuse his power and show his force when there's no need to show force. Because people that understand what real power is, they don't have to have a need to show force unless it's necessary. And it was nothing necessary about the cop. He invaded her personal space. It also, this thing about law enforcement and black folks with cigarettes and cigars. Why are they killing so many black folks just because they have cigarettes or cigars? I think about Eric Gardner, where he not killed or choked out to death by the NYPD because he was selling Lucy cigarettes, supposedly. Was Mike Brown not gunned down in cold blood by Darren Wilson because he allegedly stole a pack of cigarillos or cigars from the local store, which we know is not a true narrative, because he had no knowledge of any incident taking place at the store, because the people who ran the store said they never called the authorities. They said that on several occasions. So what is going on here? Is black life worth more than Skittles and Arizona iced tea, than Newports and anything else? Does black lives matter? No, black lives do not matter unless they are being exploited and controlled by the powers that be in this system of white supremacy, racism. And Sister Sandra Bland's death proves that. And so many other people dying prove that. So we gotta stop lying to ourselves that it's all about how we treat the cops, because it's not about the cops. The cop life is no more valuable than your life. Really, it's about respecting yourself enough to maintain your survival. It's about self-preservation in this system. It's not about respecting authority figures. I don't respect anybody or any authority that does not respect me and my humanity. And you'll be a fool to respect anybody that does not respect you or your humanity. You'll be a fool to concede everything to an authority, quote unquote, that does not respect your well-being or have your best interests at heart. Only a fool will do that, and only a fool will let their enemies be the educators of their children. Being too compliant is what got black folks in this position. Blaming the victim has got black folks in this position. Even when we the victim, they gotta dig into they had a poor credit rating, they had a poor credit score, or they failed school, or they was late on child support payments. They come on, white supremacy and their media apparatus and propaganda machine comes up with any excuse to demean and make black people who are victims of horrendous crimes and injustices look like degenerates and subhuman. This is why it's so important to have independent black media, so we can have a different narrative out there. If you look at Ralph Ellison's masterpiece, The Invisible Man, he talked about how you must control your own story or you'll be a marginal or invisible character in your own narrative. Black folks must learn through the social media, like Sister Sandra Bland. Sandra speaks from the grave because she had the sense to document her narrative, to share it with the world on her own terms. And that's why, regardless of what they try to dig up on Sister Sandra Bland and try to say this and that and try to character assassinate this sister, you had this sister speaking beyond the grave. Through the social media, through her videos, through her Twitter, through the Instagram, through her Facebook postings. She have left her cosmic prints on this thing. So what if Emmett Till had these things at his disposal? Well, he was able to do Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Because that happened almost 60 years ago. It'll be 60 years ago in August when it happened. And black folks are still getting killed by the powers that be. So black folks, what are we going to do as a collective? I mean, it's no good just to protest and march and have prayer vigils if there's really no anything that's going to be different. And it's sad. What bothers me is that the fact that, I see a sister, and all due respect to the sister and the family and the lawyer, But where was they at? Where was everybody at when she needed them to return her phone calls? I mean, the sister said they talked. One of the sisters said they talked on the phone. And they was trying to raise the bail money. But my thing is this: like I saw the brother, she left a voicemail on his voice message on his phone, and he looking all guilty and sorrowful. I feel sorry for them because that's gonna bother the family. Because somebody could have gave her $500 to get her out of jail. She shouldn't have been in jail for those 3 days. But I'm not blaming the family, but I'm just letting us know that black people, we need each other. She needed somebody, man, to listen to those voice messages, or that voice message is heartbreaking for me. Because I'm not, they not, I mean, we all, sometimes, like, I miss voice messages. I fail to return them in a timely manner. I miss calls, not knowing it might be the last call or the last voice message. And as black folks, we got to realize every time we leave our homes, there's a very real possibility that living in a system of white supremacy, racism, that we might not be coming back. But thinking about that, and Sister Sandra Bland knew that. And her mom said she want to go back to end the social injustice down south. But sweetheart, like Brother Malcolm said, anything south of Canada is the South. Okay, so just as in Chicago, just as in Prairie View, A.M., just as in Memphis, Tennessee, or anywhere, you're dealing with that. And really, I think the Prairie View A&M should be responsible or hold accountable for her death as well. Because with my understanding, that second police officer, who was a female, was a Prairie View A&M police officer. So I mean, it's a lot of guilt to go around for everybody, not just with Waller County. But it is possible that I believe that she might have suffered a seizure, and the folks panic and they try to cover it up, but they did it in a silly way, a very, very silly way. And now the truth will come to light. And it's also possible, but maybe she want to take her destiny in her own hands, that she really want to make history and a difference for her people, and she was willing to put her life on the line for that. People say, "Oh, that's crazy thing." I said, no, it's not. It's like if you go back to a people's army, an army that's willing to die can always defeat an army that's fighting to live. An army that is willing to die can always defeat an army that is fighting to live. You think about, for example, in World War II, you think about the kamikaze pilots, the Japanese pilots, who was willing to give their life for a cause greater than themselves. You also think about Vietnam War, when it was starting, like all the stuff, when the monks set themselves on fire. Some monks and stuff set themselves on fire to protest the war. They basically gave their life to try to save more lives. So this is not, I mean, even you think about, okay, the famous story of Casey Jones, right? The train engineer who tried to, save other lives by putting his life on the line and trying to avoid a train wreck. And so you think about all these things. I mean, so many examples. So people say, well, it's out there. No, it's not crazy. Think about Dr. King and what Dr. King said. If a person is not willing to die for something, they ain't fit to live. And I'm paraphrasing Dr. King. I'm paraphrasing that, So that is something to think about. Let's all pray, as the words of Baba Gregory, Dick Gregory would say. Pray every day at noon, meditate at noon, for the truth to come out. And I believe the truth is coming out. And matter of fact, I believe the truth is already out there. I believe a lot of times we don't know how to discern those truths. But it's out there and it's coming, and it'll be made more clear with clarity. But thank you all for taking the time to listen to this this thing I'm saying, because it's been on my mind. But yeah, foul play, revolutionary suicide, none of the above, or all of the above. We do know that Sister Sandra Bland, you was a beautiful soul and spirit. May your spirit never die, but may your soul find peace. You are unforgettable. You made your mark on the world. It kind of remind me of what they said about Mike Brown. He said he was going to be famous and known worldwide one day. And you are famous and known worldwide now, as Mike Brown was last year. But you probably could not imagine the price you will have to pay in order to make a difference. So, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, scholars and laymen, thank you so much for listening to The Artivist. Thanks. If you like what you heard, please feel free to subscribe and also give a donation. because we got some great things coming out very soon. So please follow us by any means necessary. And in the words of the great Skeleton, we love you madly. Keep producing and pushing.